A young person grows up inside a story that feels complete. He goes to church, he learns the words, he learns which questions are allowed and which ones are dangerous. He believes what his father believes, not because he is foolish, but because belonging is the first kind of truth we ever learn. And then slowly, another kind of education begins. He studies science. At first it seems harmless. Facts, formulas, experiments, names of things. But then something happens that isn't listed in any textbook. He discovers that science does not begin with answers. Science begins with doubt, not cynical doubt, not the fashionable kind where you reject everything to look clever. Science begins with the honest kind, the willingness to admit you might be wrong and to stay wrong until the evidence forces you to move, and that habit changes you, because once you learn to think in degrees of certainty, you stop speaking in absolutes. You stop saying, "I know," when you really mean, "I was told." You stop treating confidence as proof. Your questions transform, quietly, almost invisibly. The question is no longer, "Is there a God?" The question becomes, "How sure am I?" That shift sounds small, but it breaks a wall in your mind. Because once you put beliefs on a probability scale, you can't unsee the scale. You can't go back to the comfort of absolute certainty, not without lying to yourself. And here's the part people misunderstand. This does not automatically make you an atheist. It doesn't automatically make you hostile to religion. It doesn't infect you like a virus. It simply teaches you a new posture toward claims. Show me how you know. A scientist who believes in God may still believe strongly, but if the scientist is consistent, the belief often becomes a different kind of belief. Less like, "I know this with perfect certainty," and more like, "I hold this with great confidence, but I accept that there is a margin of doubt." And that margin matters, because religion, in its traditional form, often asks for a kind of certainty that science refuses to grant to anything. Science doesn't say true and false the way a courtroom does. It says, this is likely, this is very likely, this is supported, this is uncertain, this is untested. It grades knowledge, not with arrogance, but with humility. So the young person is not necessarily abandoning God. He is abandoning one specific mental habit, the habit of treating certainty as a virtue. And once that habit is gone, it tends to disappear everywhere, because now he can't stop. Doubt becomes a lens. It turns toward every claim that cannot be checked, measured, tested, or at least examined in a disciplined way. And that is where the tension begins, not between science and faith as enemies, but between two different meanings of the word know. At this point, someone usually objects. They say, science can't disprove God, and they're right. Science is not built to prove negatives about metaphysical entities. Science doesn't roam the universe looking for invisible things and then declare victory when it doesn't find them. That's not how it works. So the real question isn't, has science disproven God? It hasn't. It can't. The real question is more subtle. Why does the traditional picture of God, especially a very human, very local, very story-shaped God, start to feel less likely to many people who learn how large and old and indifferent the universe appears to be? Because science teaches you scale. It teaches you that Earth is not the center of anything. It teaches you that the sun is one star among hundreds of billions in a galaxy, and that the galaxy is one among billions of galaxies. It teaches you that humans arrived late, very late, in a cosmic history that ran for billions of years before anyone could write a prayer or build a cathedral. And once you see that, a certain kind of story begins to feel too small. Not necessarily false, but small, provincial. Like a myth designed for a village that didn't know the sky had depth. Science also teaches you continuity, the same atoms that make your bones make the stars. The same laws that govern chemistry in your blood govern chemistry in a distant nebula. The same physics that makes a stone fall makes a planet orbit. Matter is not divided into sacred and ordinary. It is one system, one set of rules, rearranged into different patterns. And when you turn that objective eye back on yourself, something strange happens. You start to feel awe in a new way. Not the awe of being the center, but the awe of being part of something vast. Life becomes less like a special exception and more like a rare, delicate pattern inside a universal machine. This is where many people become confused. They think science is a cold doctrine that replaces wonder with numbers. But the scientist's wonder is not smaller, it is deeper. It is wonder with discipline. It is wonder that refuses to pretend it knows more than it does. And that is precisely where religion and science often collide. Not on ethics, not on kindness, not on whether love matters, but on metaphysical claims that ask to be treated as certain. Because science at its core doesn't attack belief, it attacks certainty without evidence. Now another objection appears, and it's an emotional one. People say, if you remove God, morality collapses. This fear makes sense. In many religious traditions, moral rules are tied to divine authority. If the authority dissolves, what holds the rules in place? But here is the surprising observation. In real life, the moral structure often does not collapse. Many people lose belief in a specific theology and yet continue to live with decency, compassion, responsibility, and restraint. They still believe it is good to treat others fairly. They still feel shame when they harm someone. They still feel pride when they do the hard, right thing. So whatever morality is, it seems to have a kind of independence. It can survive the weakening of metaphysical certainty, which raises a deeper question. Maybe ethics is not simply a command from above. Maybe it is also a human inheritance, a social, psychological, and cultural structure that can exist with or without the metaphysical frame. And that leads us to the real separation line. Science can help you predict consequences, but it cannot tell you what you should value. There is a clean way to split this problem that makes everything less confused. Ask two questions. First, if I do this, what will happen? Second, do I want that to happen? The first question is scientific. It is about cause and effect. It is about consequences, prediction, evidence, and models. Science is unbelievably powerful here. It can tell you what a medicine will do, what a policy will likely cause, what a technology tends to produce, what a behavior usually leads to. But the second question, do I want that, is not scientific. It is moral. It is about values. You can't run an experiment to decide what is worth wanting. You can measure outcomes, but you cannot measure goodness the way you measure temperature. So science and ethics are not natural enemies. They live in different categories. The conflict tends to appear elsewhere, in metaphysical claims presented as unquestionable facts. Historically, this pattern is familiar. People fought over whether Earth moved. People fought over evolution. People fought over the age of the planet. Each time science advanced by evidence, and religion, at least in its literal metaphysical claims, often retreated. And yet, even when those metaphysical claims changed, ethical teachings often remained. Whether Earth orbits the Sun or the Sun orbits Earth, kindness still matters. Whether humans share ancestry with animals or were created separately, cruelty is still cruelty. Ethics does not collapse just because a cosmology changes. So, where is the real tension? It's in inspiration. Religion does not only provide a metaphysical map and a moral code, it provides comfort, community, courage, meaning. It gives people strength to do what they already believe is right. It can produce art, sacrifice, hope, resilience, and that inspiration is often tightly tied to metaphysical certainty. People draw strength from feeling that the universe is watching, that a divine order is real, that they are part of a plan. When doubt enters, even a little doubt, those emotional supports can weaken. And this is a serious human problem, not a debate club problem. People need comfort. People need courage. People need something to hold on to when life is brutal. So you can't just say, well, be uncertain, it's better. Better for what? Better for whom? Better in which moments? This is the honest place to stand. Science can be emotionally hard. Doubt can be heavy. Not knowing can feel like standing in open space without walls. And yet for some minds that openness is not frightening, it is liberating, because certainty can also be a cage. If you must be absolutely sure, you must defend your certainty. You must protect it from questions. You must avoid evidence that threatens it. You must build a fortress around an idea, but the scientific spirit is the opposite of a fortress. It is an expedition. It says the mysteries are mysteries until we solve them. It says we are allowed to be wrong. And it says something that many people find almost offensive at first. Not knowing is not a failure. Not knowing is the beginning of discovery. So the young person becomes an adult, and now he lives with a new skill, the ability to say, I don't know, without shame. He might still believe. He might not. But either way, he no longer mistakes certainty for truth. And that changes how he responds to every ideology that demands unquestioning agreement, religious or political or cultural. Because the danger is not belief, the danger is absolute certainty that refuses to be examined. There is a reason this matters beyond private belief. Any system, religious, political, philosophical, that claims it has all the answers is tempted to end curiosity. And once curiosity ends, correction ends. Once correction ends, error becomes permanent. The scientific attitude is not everything is false. The scientific attitude is everything is testable, and anything might need revision. That posture, humility of the intellect, is one of the great achievements of civilization, and it can live alongside the ethical heritage, humility of the spirit, the idea that people matter, that love matters, that dignity matters, that we should treat others as we would want to be treated. Logically, these two heritages are compatible. You can be uncertain about metaphysics and still be committed to kindness. You can be a skeptic and still be loyal, generous, brave. You can doubt the divinity of a story and still believe that compassion is a good way to live. The problem is not logic. The problem is the human heart. People don't only need correct statements. They need motivation. They need meaning. They need something that makes them stand up when it would be easier to sit down. And here we arrive at a question with no easy answer. How do you preserve the comfort and inspiration that faith provides without demanding absolute certainty about metaphysical claims? Some people find inspiration in religion itself, even with doubt. Some find it in art, in community, in responsibility, in the beauty of the universe, in the simple fact that other people are real and can be helped. Others struggle, and it would be dishonest to pretend the struggle isn't real. But there is one thing we can say with confidence. Uncertainty is not automatically a moral collapse. It can be a moral upgrade, because when you choose kindness without a cosmic threat hanging over you, the kindness is yours. When you act ethically without the promise of reward, the ethics is not a transaction. When you face the universe without guaranteed answers and still decide to care for others, that care is not borrowed from certainty. It is built from character. And maybe that is one of the quiet gifts of the scientific spirit. It teaches you to live honestly with incomplete knowledge, to admit what you do not know, to refuse the comfort of pretending, to keep asking questions not because you hate belief, but because curiosity is a form of respect for reality. So if you're looking for a single sentence to carry out of this, doubt is not the enemy of meaning. Doubt is the tool that keeps meaning from becoming a prison. And perhaps the central challenge of our time is not choosing between science and faith as enemies, but learning how to hold two things at once: the courage to live without absolute certainty, and the compassion to live well together anyway.